Hello and welcome to The Pickle, brought to you by AC4SA, academic coaching for student athletes, and co-hosted by Ethan O'Day and Jack Sundberg. Here on The Pickle, we discuss with our guests, ranging from coaches to professional athletes, the pickle of all things: academics, sports, recruiting, high school to the pros, you name it, we talk about it. Our goal for the podcast is to give people insight into the sports world and student athletes' perspectives by sharing current and former athletes, educators, and coaches' real-life experiences. Telling story is one of the most powerful means for leaders to influence, teach, and inspire. These stories resonate in our culture, history, and lesson learned. The Pickle brings you these stories of adversity, triumph, failure, and determination to get inspired, to take them to your school, home, life, and court. Listen, learn, share, and enjoy. Today's guest is Erika DeVaughn. Erika DeVaughn played Division I volleyball at the University of South Florida before transferring to the University of Sanford to continue her career. She graduated with a bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Sanford. Afterwards, she attended Florida A&M, where she was a graduate assistant in the athletics department, where she received her master's degree in sports management. From there, she went on to the University of Cincinnati, Stony Brook, and Temple University, where she was an academic advisor for various sports teams.
The Pickle Podcast, here we go. We got Erika DeVaughn out of originally from Jacksonville, Florida. You played volleyball at University of South Florida and Sanford. Really excited to have you on. Academic advisor, a bunch of different collegiate schools, most recently Temple.
Yep.
Erika, how's it going?
Not too bad. So I played volleyball at two very different universities, and then went on to academic advising, which is actually kind of funny because during my time as a student athlete, I wasn't the ideal student athlete. So it was interesting when I got into grad school and I was telling my friends, all right, I think I'm gonna go into academic advising. And everybody was like, people are gonna listen to you about academics. I was like, yeah, I got it. So definitely got into that. And started off at Cincinnati, went to Stony Brook, and then most recently was working at Temple.
Awesome. Yeah, no, thank you for having us on. I'm excited to see your insights on, like you said, being an athlete, but then also being in the academic advising field, because I'm sure you had some different experiences on both sides. So we like to do, with all of our guests so far, you're our third guest, but we like to do the rundown. So
Okay.
Ethan's just going to ask you just 5 quick questions, get to know you a little bit better, and then, maybe you can, talk to our people a little bit. Go ahead, Ethan.
All right. Here is the rundown. Dinner with one athlete.
LeBron James, no question.
Great choice. Number one thing on the bucket list.
To do the parasailing. So when the little triangle on the back.
You can count me out of that. I'm all set with that.
Favorite movie of all time.
All time. All time. I mean, Superbad is up there on the list just for all time classic. Probably that one.
I love that.
That's awesome.
How do you start your day every morning?
Well, these days is different with the baby in there, but usually starts with just all the water and some vitamins and then something sweet to eat.
There we go. And first quote that comes to your mind, or your favorite quote.
A quote that I really like, but I always get it wrong, is the quote where it's if you don't plan to prepare, you prepare to fail, or something of that nature.
Yes.
Just because I am a big planner, so I do really think that quote is very applicable to me. So I like that one.
Yes, my college coach used to always say that when he was when he would do a scout about how he always prepare. Yeah, that's a good one. All right, you just did the rundown. Congrats.
Nice.
So I guess we'll sort of just dive into our first question. Because at the beginning you kind of talked about it just even a little bit to start. So being a Division I volleyball player, and then obviously transitioning your role as academic advisor, how did your views change on academics, but also athletics, or did they change at all?
They definitely changed a lot. So I came from USF, which is a fairly large school down in Florida, and then transferred to a much smaller private school. So like my resources changed. So I was really used to the academic advisors at USF. Like they pretty much mapped out life for me. Like I had to do this, this, and this on every single day of the week. Like they planned it out. They had everything picked out for me when it comes to like classes and scheduling and things like that. So like they were really helpful in a way that I didn't even know I needed that help. And then I transferred to a small private school, and they didn't really do academic advisors like that. You were more so on your own in the classroom. So I was like, all right, who's supposed to like pick out my schedule and like who's picking up my books and stuff? And I had to really like make that change. So it was interesting for me to see like how much the advisors actually alleviate some of the pressure of what some of the students have to go through when I no longer had them. So when I got into academic advising, like right after grad school, I was working with football and basketball student athletes. So more of your considered at-risk student athletes, like once you get into the field, just because of their like time demands and sometimes how they come into college, they're more at risk, but like they really need that extra resource. So it was nice to see that I was appreciating more what my advisors did for me when I was at USF once I got into the field, because they really are like helpful as far as like all the steps that these, freshmen need to kind of like acclimate to the college lifestyle now.
Yeah, no, that's so true. Ethan,
Yeah.
you got anything? Go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, you make a really interesting point. Coming from like almost like that high major school where you have a lot of stuff more done for you as an athlete, and then going to like the smaller type school where you have to do more things on your own. When you were an academic advisor, did you kind of nudge your students to be more I don't know how to word this, kind of advocate more for themselves basically, and give them more freedom? Because I know a lot of student athletes, what they say is, you have everything done for you, and it's kind of weird after college because everything, exactly like you said, everything is planned out. You have absolutely every part of your day planned out, and then college ends and it's like, whoa, what do I do now? When you're going into career or your professional sport. So how did you kind of communicate that to your students once you became an advisor, I guess is my question.
I'd say I was really big on just like when it comes to some of their academics, with the student being like the main person in the classroom, I pushed a lot for them to be that voice when they needed to like talk to their professors. If it came down to helping them like reach out to maybe deans on campus or somebody else on campus, then I had no problem kind of like being the middleman in that situation. But when it came to like one-on-one, I need to speak to my professor about, help in this area or maybe some extra tutoring before the upcoming exam. I really would push them to like, you need to go talk to him. Like it's him or her. It's your grade. It's the only way they're going to know if you really care about the class is if you're the one speaking to them. So just kind of pushing them to be more like proactive when it comes to like the actual grades. And then if you can take care of that, then like some of your other things or some of your other responsibilities, I'm definitely willing to help you more there. But when it comes down to like you in the classroom, like you got to put yourself out there, like especially in some of the bigger schools that I worked at, the student is one of 100, 200 people in the classroom. And especially with, being a student athlete and like now you're missing class and it kind of seems like you don't care, you want to definitely put yourself in front of the professor and let him know that you need as much help as you can get when it comes down to caring more about you passing the class and stuff like that.
Yeah. No, I think we were going to ask you a question sort of about, being a transfer, student athlete, but you kind of answered at the beginning. So I guess a question that I think would be a good one is, oh my God, I think I forgot what I was going to say. No, as being, because I think at the beginning you said you weren't a prototypical student athlete, like, which I think a lot of us are, looking back, I'm not, in there sitting at the front of the class with my hat off at all times.
Right.
When did you realize, like, through your academic career and you went to grad school, you're like, oh my God, like, maybe I'm not going to play volleyball forever. And like, maybe I really got to lock it in and realize sort of how important it is, because all you think about when you're coming up is like, I got to get to school, I got to get in, and I just got to go play at USF. So when did it sort of like hit you like, oh man, I got to like lock in on the school side?
I think it was definitely the transition from USF to Sanford. Like, so as soon as I got to Sanford, it was just a different environment. Like my whole team, like they were on top of it, like classwork, studying, like we would finish practice and we would go to the cafeteria, get some food, and they would go finish some homework. And I was just like, okay, so I guess I got to do that because this is what everybody else is doing. But at my other school, like that wasn't the case. Like there was way too many things to do. So it was definitely once I got there and just realized I was kind of like the outlier of being focused on academics, was when I was like, all right, I got to get it together. And then I was so psychology was my undergrad, and one of my professors at Sanford, he was really, really helpful. Like he was really hands-on with helping me understand like the different avenues that psychology could take me. So the more classes I had with him, the more I was like, all right, I got to fix my, study habits. I got to actually go into study hall to get some work done because I know I'm not getting any work done sitting on my couch. So I kind of changed up based on like my environment, and I was more so on my own because I didn't have that, academic advisor resource. So I knew that I had to like rely on my professor and rely on some of our like study hall time and stuff like that to really like get it together.
So when you obviously transition into the role of as an academic advisor, you meant like Cincinnati, Temple, Stony Brook. What was something consistent that you saw when, these freshmen were coming in and they were just like totally overwhelmed? You're just like, oh my God, this kid's not going to make it. What was like something consistent that you saw with, the football, baseball, basketball kids that you're like, this is something that I wish I could tell these kids when they were a sophomore in high school?
Mm-hmm. I'd say overall, just like students going from a high school classroom to a college like lecture hall really changes the game. As far as in high school, students nowadays might be a little bit different, but high schoolers aren't taking notes. Like they're not actively paying attention to what their high school teacher might be saying to them just because they're going to get homework and they're going to get all these other assignments that go along with what the teacher might have been talking about. But once you get to the college level, now you're in a lecture hall and like you actually have to take notes and pay attention because the only thing in the class is a test. There's not going to be homework to help you, follow along, and there's not going to be all these pop quizzes and classwork. So we had a lot of students coming in, and it would be like 2 or 3 weeks into the semester, and I'd be like, all right, an exam is coming up, like, where are your notes? And there's no notes. And I'm like, well, have you been reading the textbook? Barely. So it's kind of like, well, you got to do one or the other. So definitely struggling like on the note taking aspect, and then study habits were some students have it, some students don't. It just kind of depends on your method. But I'd say study habits from like high school to college are just it requires them to take like a huge jump in paying attention to like how they need to properly study for like a college exam.
Right. And not to mention, you're going to be, if like USF volleyball, like we were in the American, UConn was with you guys and we're traveling all over the place. So then all of a sudden you're missing 3 days out of the week and you're like, oh man, now what do I do to get notes? It's like, so I think not only that, but then it's like, how do you adapt to, missing, 3 days of school a week, or if in season you're missing 2 days a week. So I think, that's a good point, but it's also like, sometimes you're not even there.
Right. And that's difficult for them too, because, sometimes it's like student athletes, they like what they're comfortable with, which might be their teammates. But when you're going to miss class, you have to speak to, just another student who's not on your team and kind of step outside your comfort zone and be like, can I get some notes from you? Or can we share something? So like, that's another step that is hard. As I like talk to some students, I'm like, who do you sit next to every day? Like, ask that person.
Yes. No, I would becoming friends with someone else that's not in your team
Right.
that's there taking those notes is so I learned that early on too when I
Mhm.
was playing basketball up at University of Vermont. Like you
Mhm.
have to find that friend that can take notes for you when you're not there and they can just send a screenshot of the notes over for the day you missed. It's
Right.
it's so important. And really good point you made about just like the skill of note taking. Like a lot of kids don't understand that and how to study for an exam, like
Mhm.
whether it's making your own study sheet, flashcards. Like a lot of kids I feel like don't learn that in high school, and you have to learn it quick in
Right.
college.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah, like those are two things that I just remembered, that learning curve.
Yeah.
Even going
And
into college, you got to figure it out.
and
um
so many professors have different like styles, so they're gonna, at a high school the teachers are probably a little bit more cohesive and they
Mhm.
work together, but professors at a college, like some of these professors work at like 3 and 4 different schools, so now you've got 5 classes with every single professor is different, so you have to make it work somehow.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Ethan, were you gonna
um
say something?
Yeah, no, I know you kind of touched on this at the beginning, but just talking about your transfer process and what that was like, because I think any kid that commits to a school, like their fear is, and some people always think about this is like transferring and what that process is like,
Yeah.
and like what was the deciding factors in that, and how that whole process worked out for you.
Yeah. So for me, so back in the day, there was no the transfer portal wasn't a thing. So like now with everything that's available for the transfer portal, it's really making things a lot smoother for any athlete that kind of wants to transfer nowadays. But for me, it was just like the team, like me and my coach weren't on the same page, and the team, not the team, just more so me and my coach. So I ended up leaving. But I transferred at the end of the spring semester. So it was a little bit more stressful than trying to figure it out at the end of the fall semester. So
Mm-hmm.
I had, obviously plans of staying at USF into the fall, and then me and my coach kind of fell out. And then at the end of that spring was when I got my release from her. And basically, once it was released, it goes into like maybe a coach's portal or something. So I was getting contacted by other coaches. But back then, like the coaches had to get permission from other
Mm-hmm.
coaches to contact me and stuff. So she finally gave her release permission to the other coaches. And once they reached out to me, I went on visits. But it was a much shorter kind of recruiting process because volleyball season is, kind of that summer preseason and then goes right into the fall. So it was going to be quick.
Right.
So I went on a couple of visits, and it was definitely, to me, it was kind of scary just because when I was in high school, like my heart was set on like staying in Florida and going to like a huge school. And I loved USF and I still loved all my teammates. So I still wanted to be there, but I was nervous to kind of take the step and move on to like another school, another conference, and then obviously changing to like it's just such a different environment. But once I got to Sanford, met with the coaches, loved the area, loved the school, and it ended up being great. Like my teammates from Sanford are literally my sisters. So I loved that I made the decision and it worked out great. And
Mm-hmm.
Sanford, we won championship. I don't see a championship in USF, but I'm just saying.
That's because you left. That's because you left. That's why.
Exactly.
No, I think
So, but
that's
it
yeah.
was, it
No,
was definitely it was definitely difficult and nerve wracking, but like all the steps end up working out. And usually, like when students transfer, it works out for them. So
yeah. No, I mean, our last guest who we had on, he talked about the importance of like, I don't know if this was the case for you, but like when you do make a decision, it's like you really want to make sure you're going to the right place. Like really like hit all the steps, like the coach, can I handle the academics, a big school, small school, like find something that works for you because, because when you get dumped in there, it's like you're in there. And it's
right,
like all of a sudden, if you're getting overwhelmed with work and stuff, maybe you're hit with the decision like, oh my God, maybe I do have to transfer, or maybe, you know, like I got to figure things out fast. So I think that was a great point you said. So sort of for our last question here, to wrap it up, we like to ask, all of our guests, if you could give one piece of advice to Erika, when she was a freshman in high school or a sophomore in high school, back then, what would you tell Erika, now today, being as successful as you are and, doing everything that you've done, what would you tell Erika as a freshman in high school?
A freshman in high school.
Hmm.
I probably just knowing me and my personality, I'm a very like laid back, everything is gonna work out type of person. But I'd say for me, when it came to my studies, I would probably tell myself to be more committed to what I know I want to do or what I think I want to do long term. And I say that just because when I got to USF, I didn't really have a direction as far as like career wise, because I knew overall, once volleyball's over, I need a job. So I originally had my eyes set on being a veterinarian just because I loved animals and all that stuff. But I didn't commit to that major and those types of classes, chemistry, biology, and stuff like that. And I wish I had because, that was my dream. And I love what I'm doing now, but it's like I didn't know what type of rigors were going to come with being in that field.
Mhm.
So I should have, did more research about it, looked more into it, and like if I really want to do it, commit to it just so that I don't have, any regrets on like my second or my third option. And
Right.
that's going to be different for everybody who goes into college because people are going to change their majors like 2 and 3 times. But if you know that your heart is set on something or your mind is set on something, like commit to it, be invested in it, and then you won't have any like doubts or regrets as you take steps
Mhm.
throughout the process.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, that's like, and it's crazy because it's like sometimes when you get there, like freshman, sophomore year, it's like almost too late
Mhm.
because then you're like, because you're taking all the prereqs, and then sophomore year, if you're really like, I want to go to the business school, then you start dumping in, taking pre-calc, whatever it is,
Right.
counting, 2001. But it's like you said, if you can have an idea before you get there,
Right.
because at times for me too, and I'm sure Ethan the same, it was just about, sport. It was just like, oh man, I just got to get there to play baseball. And then
Exactly.
you're there and it's like, oh my God, it's too late. Now what am I going to do?
Right.
And, obviously some people can go on and play professionally, but, not everybody. So, um, but, no, I appreciate you coming on. I know, want to wish you the best with, your little guy
Thank you.
and yeah, thanks for coming on.
Thank you guys for having me.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Erika. Appreciate you coming on. And yes, good luck with everything going forward.
Thanks for tuning in to The Pickle, who is brought to you by AC4SA, academic coaching for student athletes, whose goal is to use the power of sport to unleash the athlete's potential in the academic arena.